Hello and welcome. My name is Guillaume and today we're going to talk about how to travel with your electric vehicle in France. We're going to talk about the different charging networks, the cards that you need to take, the regional and national networks as well, everything you need to know about how to drive a UAV in France. So I've been traveling in France many times. So my first trip was back in 2015 with a 24 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf. I've traveled once with that car, and then I traveled for another 2.5 years, so that was 2 times with the 30 kilowatt hour Leaf. Then I traveled 3 times with the BMW i3 33 kilowatt hours. So that's a total of 6 trips I've done in France. Every time I took the ferry from Ireland onto France, and then I traveled. I usually go to the west coast, so my family lives in Nantes, so that would be the south of Brittany on the west coast. But last year I did a trip and I went across the whole country, so I've got a bit of experience with the different charging networks. Okay, so national networks, you've got a few of those. It's not necessarily great, but let's start with the superchargers from Tesla, of course. So France being quite of a center of France, if you go to Spain, Germany, etc., the network, the supercharger network is quite good. So there are superchargers every 150 kilometers probably, all across France, so it's quite good. So if you need to drive across France in a Tesla, no problem at all. Then you have Izivia. Izivia is a national network from EDF. This network used to have around 300 chargers. Unfortunately, they were DC chargers, so they were triple standard. Unfortunately, there was an issue with the supplier of the hardware, and earlier in 2020, the network decided to just stop the service for 85% of those. So I think there's about 25 fast chargers left. And it's a bit of a shame because those were really well made across the country. They were put on motorways and on big routes. So I've used these chargers last year when I traveled with the i3 because it had CCS. Without it, it's much more complicated if you have CCS. But there's a few other options. Second option is Auchan. So Auchan is a supermarket chain, and there's about 100 of those fast chargers. So they are 50 kilowatt DC charger, fast AC or Chademo. So do not work with CCS. Those are quite old chargers. You find them in those Auchan supermarkets. So they are not always reliable just because they are old. They were installed around 2014, 2015, so quite a long time ago. They've never really been replaced. Also an issue is they are fast charger in shopping malls, so you might have people just charging their car and doing their shopping, and they come back maybe way later once their car is charged up. So it could be a bit of an issue with this. I've had some issues. I used those a lot when I was driving the Nissan Leaf, so that was quite practical, but it's a bit more risky. You also have Nissan. So between these and Nissan and also some IKEAs, you actually have a good Chademo network, national network. You have to be careful, however, if you travel on Sundays, because some of those would be inaccessible on Sundays. Typically in France, most shops would be closed on Sundays and shopping malls, etc. Some could be accessible, but many are not. And I've done the mistake to travel on Sunday a few years ago, and there was a good number of fast chargers I couldn't access. So just be careful when you do book your ferry. The other fast charging network is Ionity. Of course, you know Ionity, they are here already. They are there in France as well. The only difference is instead of paying per kilowatt hour in France, you pay per minute. So depending on the car, it could be really interesting or not interesting at all. So be careful of that. But the network is not as dense as it is here. It's not even dense here, but there it's still patchy. So you can use it, but you cannot go across France just by using Ionity. So you will have to use a combination of several networks. If you have a Renault Zoe, you also can benefit from the vast network of Renault dealers in France. Many of them have 22 kilowatt AC charge points, so it's not as quick as the fast AC ones you can find on CCS if you own a Zoe ZE50, but it's pretty much everywhere. So this is very good. Also, not on the weekends. You have to be sure you don't go on a Sunday because you will not access those. That's for sure. So there is a very different thing between France and Ireland regarding charging networks. Is you actually have a lot of local and regional charging networks. So in France they are like energy syndicate. So every department they have an administration that takes care of the distribution of energy in general, and they were given the task to put a local network of chargers. There are 96 of those departments in France, so each of them had a different policy. Some have nothing, some have only AC charge point, some have AC and DC charge point. It really varies a lot, but you have some regions that are really well covered. So it kind of depends where you're going, so it's important to know, but you will have a very good coverage in some regions and some will be very patchy. So depending where you're going, you might want to use those networks and just change your route, or because those areas, they're about 100 by 100 kilometers, that would be the size of one department. Well, you can just charge before and jump over the said department if there is no network there and go to the next one. It's also something you can do if the range of your car allows it. So you can work around with this. However, it requires more preparation because, of course, you would need to be sure you can access to these networks. So we'll talk about, of course, the charging cards after that. So charging cards, planning. The first thing you should do, in my opinion, is to go on Chargemap. Chargemap is a good website. It's actually a French website, so France is quite well covered by a Chargemap. And if you go there, you can filter by type of connector, so you can really quickly see the connectors that are along your route, and then you can go on there seeing which networks are using, so you can use those connectors. So Chargemap also sells a card, so they have a charging card that you can purchase from them, and they can ship it to you in Ireland, so they cater for international travelers, and then you can actually use that card in many of the regional and national networks. So you can as well make a filter. So if you really want to travel only with them, which is very possible, you can actually use their app and have a filter on only the charge points that using their card. So it makes it easier. However, just be aware that you're gonna pay an extra fee for using this because it's like roaming with their card, and sometimes it's a bit expensive. But if you want the peace of mind and you don't care too much about paying a bit more, I think it's a very good option. Another card you might want to have is the Kiwi Pass. The Kiwi Pass is the charging card that you will need if you're using the chargers that are in Auchan. So if you have fast AC, so if you have a Generation 1 Zoe, or if you have a Nissan Leaf or another car using Chademo, this is a good option to have. Other than that, you have regional networks. Sometimes they require to ship a card, but many of them just require online registration. So depending where you're going, you want to and the charging networks that you think you're using, you can probably register directly online with those. Another website you can use, depending on your connector, there is a Chademo map and CCS map. So it's actually derivated from Chargemap, but it only shows CCS or Chademo connectors, and it's quite easy to see what you can do. So there is quite a few different ferry routes you can take. Of course, it all depends on where you live in Ireland and where you're traveling in France, but there is a few different options you can consider. So first you have to consider that there are 3 ferry lines going directly from Ireland to France without going through the UK. So you've got Irish ferries, and they go from Dublin to Cherbourg. You've got Stena Line going from Roscoff to Cherbourg, and you also have Brittany ferries from Cork, Ringaskiddy to Roscoff. This is 2020. I know there's more coming next year with Brittany ferries. They have 2 rotations a week. The other have, depending on the season, but there is a good few options to consider. The Irish ferries boat W Yates is actually equipped with a charge point. So it's tied to charge point. I've not used it yet. I will use it very soon, so I'll let you know about it. But that's the only ferry going to France that currently can cater for for onboard charging. Be careful, because that ferry is not used all year round. So I know this year it's not running to France after September. So just have to know that this one you can use an onboard charger. Now, if you have the option to go between Cherbourg and Roscoff, I would recommend you to use Roscoff. That's personal preference. For me, it doesn't make sense. Where I'm going usually, it's about the same distance, so I could use one of the 2 ports. However, the charging networks in Brittany is so much better than the one in Normandy. So if you arrive in Cherbourg, the issue is that there are no CCS charger before the next 100 kilometers. And it might be okay depending on your car, but on that department there is only 2 fast chargers in the south, and they are very often offline, and so you've got to go even further to get a charge. So it's not great. I've been in trouble, let's say, with Chademo as well, because there is one Auchan in Cherbourg when you arrive there, even though I assume that you would have a full charge before leaving Ireland. This is a bit problematic because there's also a Nissan that is closed on Sundays, and with my i3 during my 2 last trips, the only CCS that I could use was in a town that was not really en route, and it was actually a 20 kilowatt CCS charge point. That's the only CCS of the whole area there I could use. So that was not great. And if you arrive in Roscoff, it's way different stories. The network is so much better. There are fast AC, Chademos, and CCS pretty much everywhere you can reach from the port, and so I would recommend going that way. If you're going on the west coast, on the southwest, then it's fine. Of course, if you're going to the east, it will add to your journey, so you might still want to go through Cherbourg. Unfortunately, you kind of need to speak a bit of French. First thing, of course, is make as much as possible before your trip. Just go on the website and register, and some of those websites, and probably most of them, would be only in French. So it could be a bit difficult, but one thing is sure, once you arrive at the charge point, if you haven't registered for that particular network, you will have instructions most likely to be written only in French, and if you need to call to register, it will probably be only in French as well. So it's not ideal, so it's better to have a few notions. So that's all I can say, is like try to prepare yourself as much as possible to avoid any language issues there. So icing, it's a bit like in Ireland. It happens sometimes. It's not too bad. That's my experience. I wouldn't complain too much about it. Usually the bays are marked and there's signposts, so it's actually okay. Queuing, also is quite fine. Usually I haven't really queued much. Very rarely I've queued when the charge points were free, so of course it attracts more people. As you know, this is the way it was in Ireland before ESB implemented the charges, and since there is way less queuing, so it's the same everywhere. So it's actually not too bad. Last year when I drove from the northwest all the way to the southeast, I think I haven't queued a single time. Most of them, yeah, I had to pay for, but that was completely fine. Even if it's just one DC charge point and there was no redundancy. So pricing in France is in general affordable. You have to pay pretty much everywhere. There's still places where there's free charging, but it's quite rare now. But in general, it's quite cheap. If you go in Brittany, for example, so you've got a few networks in the whole northwest of France, and they actually have a roaming agreement. And those I think there's 6 or 7 different networks, and they all have the same pricing. So it's 20 cents per kilowatt hour on AC and 30 cents per kilowatt hour on DC. So this is a kind of a typical kind of pricing you can find, so it's quite reasonable. If you use Ionity, I was mentioning, this is per minute, so 79 cents per minute could be a lot of money, but you know, 79 cents per kilowatt hour is also is a lot of money. Tesla supercharger is actually one of the cheapest in Europe. It's just 24 cents. So the Izivia is €1 per 5 minutes. So it depends how fast charges your car, but you know, there's just about 25 fast charger left, so you might not use it, but it's a 50 kilowatt charge point. Yeah, it's very reasonable, because you would stay no more than 25 minutes. That's just €5. So it's very similar to what we pay here in Ireland with ESB cars. So most of them do not require any subscription, so you know, it's kind of pay as you go. However, if you go for Kiwi Pass, you have to pay €19 for the actual badge, and then you pay 70 cents per session on top of whatever is the price of the network that is behind, because Kiwi is not a network by itself, it's just a provider. Chargemap is usually a price per kilowatt hour, and their commission is integrated into the price. So, and you see the cost directly on the website. So yeah, you wouldn't have to pay too much upfront, except that if you get that Kiwi Pass. So as far as I'm aware, there are not really specialized places to rent an EV, but like if you get the regular traditional car rental companies, and they sometimes have those in certain cities. I know recently in Corsica, 500 Aways U5, so it's a Chinese EV, just arrived earlier this year, and you can rent those right now. So that's Hertz Corsica offering this. And then of course you've got some schemes. So for example, in Paris, you can drive the E208, the Zoe, and the new Citroën Ami. That's 45 kilometers an hour, small two-seater car, and those would be like just pay as you go. You just pay per I think it's per minute actually, or per kilometer. So it's a very short rental. Unfortunately, there are no specific incentives, so you pay full price toll, you pay, which is expensive there. You also have to pay for parking. There's no specific arrangements. Maybe a few local towns offer some special offers, or maybe free parking, but that would be at a very local level, so it's impossible to know. But I've never come across any specific incentives regarding this. There is another thing you might want to have is there is a little disc that you can order that will say what is the emission of your car. So I've ordered that for my last trip. Basically, depending on the emissions, it will be in a different color, and depending on the location and the level of pollution, driving some cars could be restricted. So the good thing is it's a very cheap thing to get. It costs literally €5 to get it shipped to you, and it's like you just stick it on the windscreen and this is good for all this time. So it's not a huge investment, it's worth it. It takes a few weeks to get to Ireland, but it is made also for foreigners. So they will put your registration plate in your little discs. It's like a road tax or something like this. At the moment you need it in Paris, so you actually need this even if you have a zero emission vehicle. You need it in Paris if you want to drive there. I think it's only during the week and during the day, not on the weekends, but it could change. So, and it could be extended to other cities, so you have to be careful of that. And the best thing you can do is really spend those €5. It's really worth it. All right, thanks for watching. If you have any additional questions, because I didn't go into details, of course, in any of these questions, you just put them below in the comment section, and I will personally answer those if I can, of course. I really encourage you to go to France in your EV. It's a nice place to go, and don't be put off by the distance. It's true, it's a big country compared to Ireland, but it's quite easy to get there. You just have to take a bit more time in your travels, but it's really worth it, and it's nice to have a quieter pace, and you can see a lot of nice places there. Thank you for watching.